Somewhere in a factory in the Netherlands sits a machine the size of a bus, weighing about 180 metric tons, built from more than 100,000 components. It costs roughly $200 million for the standard version and up to $400 million for the newest one. Every advanced chip on Earth, the processor inside your phone, the chip powering the AI model you used this morning, the silicon behind every hyperscaler's data center, was shaped at some point by one of these machines. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Only one company on the planet knows how to build them. Not the market leader, the only manufacturer. Its own filings say so in plain language. It is currently the world's only maker of EUV lithography systems. That company is ASML, based in a small Dutch town most people cannot pronounce, and this year it became the single most valuable public company in the history of Europe. Today on The Stack, we open the file on the machine that quietly gates the entire AI economy. Before the mechanics, the stakes. You do not need to own ASML stock for this company to matter to you. Every chip inside every device you use, and every AI data center training the models reshaping your job, your investments, and your newsfeed passes through this exact bottleneck first. TSMC cannot make an advanced chip without ASML's machines. Samsung cannot. Intel cannot, which means Nvidia cannot, Apple cannot, and neither can any AI lab racing to build the next frontier model. A handful of governments have figured out that whoever controls this one machine effectively controls the pace of the entire AI race, which is exactly why the Netherlands, the United States, and China have spent the last 6 years fighting over who is allowed to buy one. This is not a niche industrial story. It is the choke point underneath every other story this channel covers. Chapter 1. The physics kept simple. Making a chip means printing circuit patterns onto silicon using light, a process called lithography. Smaller transistors need shorter wavelengths of light to print them accurately, and for 2 decades the industry hit a wall with the light it had. ASML's answer was extreme ultraviolet light, EUV, a wavelength 14 times shorter than the older technology, precise enough to resolve features under 10 nanometers. There's just one problem. EUV light does not occur naturally and gets absorbed by ordinary air and glass, so it has to be manufactured inside a vacuum. ASML's solution sounds almost unreasonable. Fire a laser at a microscopic droplet of molten tin 50,000 times a second, flatten it with one pulse, then vaporize it with a second pulse into plasma heated to roughly 220,000 degrees, about 40 times hotter than the surface of the sun. That flash of superheated tin emits the EUV light that then gets bounced through a chain of mirrors, because at this wavelength even glass lenses absorb too much, and focused onto a silicon wafer with sub-nanometer precision. It took ASML roughly 3 decades of research and billions of dollars to make that process reliable enough to sell. Nobody else has matched it. Chapter 2. The numbers. In the second quarter of 2026, ASML reported total net sales of €9.3 billion and net income of €2.9 billion, at a gross margin of 54%. That capped a run of upgrades. Guidance for full year 2026 started the year at €34 to €39 billion, got revised up to €36 to €40 billion in April, and then jumped again in July to €43 to €45 billion, with margins guided even higher at 54 to 56%. The company's last disclosed order backlog at the end of 2025 stood at €38.8 billion, and its final quarterly bookings report before it stopped publishing them, judging the number too lumpy to be useful quarter to quarter, came in at €13.2 billion, nearly double what analysts expected. In June of 2026, all of that demand pushed ASML's market capitalization to roughly $674 billion, making it, for a stretch, the single most valuable publicly traded company in European history. Built entirely on machines almost none of its investors could explain how to operate. Chapter 3. Why nobody else can simply build a competitor. ASML's 2 historic lithography rivals, Nikon and Canon, both tried EUV and both gave up. Canon shelved its program in 2001. Nikon formally exited in 2011, Citing cost and years of delay, neither could close. That leaves the field to ASML alone, and even ASML cannot do this by itself. The optics inside every EUV machine mirrors polished so precisely that scaled up to the size of Germany, the largest bump would be less than a millimeter tall, come from exactly one supplier, Carl Zeiss in Germany, in which ASML holds a stake specifically to keep that relationship intact. The laser system that vaporizes the tin comes from Cymer, a company ASML bought outright in 2013 rather than risk losing it. Roughly 80% of an EUV machine's components are sourced from a network of about 5,100 external suppliers built up over decades. You cannot shortcut that with a large checkbook. Intel, one of ASML's own customers, has the money to try and still cannot replicate it. That is what a real, durable monopoly looks like in industrial hardware. Chapter 4: The Customer Side of the Ledger. ASML's own annual filing states that in 2025, its single largest customer, unnamed by policy but widely inferred to be TSMC, accounted for 23.9% of total net sales, up from 16.6% the year before. Its two largest customers together made up 38% of revenue, and four customers, each individually above 10%, accounted for 61.2% of everything ASML sold. Only 5 companies in the world currently run EUV machines in high-volume production at all: TSMC, Samsung, Intel, SK Hynix, and Micron. ASML's own risk disclosures admit the obvious danger in plain language, that selling to a relatively small number of customers leaves the business vulnerable if any one of them pulls back. It is the mirror image of TSMC's own concentration problem that we covered in an earlier episode. The machine that gates the chip industry is itself gated by a handful of buyers who could, in theory, walk away. Chapter 5: The part that turns a hardware story into a geopolitics story. In 2019, under pressure from Washington, the Dutch government declined to renew ASML's license to sell its most advanced EUV machine to a Chinese customer, and no EUV system has legally left the Netherlands for China since. In 2023, the restrictions widened to cover the most advanced, older generation machines too, cutting off further shipments by the end of that year. In 2024, the Dutch government took over direct licensing authority itself and added a new wrinkle. ASML now needs a government license just to service machines China already owns. In April of 2026, a bipartisan bill in the US Congress, named the Match Act, proposed banning both sales and servicing of these tools to a named list of Chinese chipmakers entirely, and threatened to force the Netherlands and Japan to fall in line within 150 days or face expanded American export rules. ASML's stock dropped more than 4% the day that bill was introduced. Days later, the Dutch King and Queen made an unusual overnight visit to the White House, export controls sitting quietly underneath the state visit. Then in June of 2026, the fight got personal. The US Commerce Secretary told ASML executives that Washington believed an EUV machine could be operating inside China, without offering public evidence. ASML's response was immediate and specific. The company has never shipped an EUV machine or any component built specifically for one to China, full stop, and it backed that denial with a number that doubles as a demonstration of just how tight this choke point really is. ASML said it can account for all 314 EUV machines it has ever built, anywhere on Earth, through remote telemetry, plus 26 more that have been formally decommissioned. A machine that is bus-sized, weighs 180 tons, and needs constant on-site servicing, ASML argued, does not simply vanish and reappear undetected. Whether or not the original accusation holds up, the response tells you everything about how concentrated this industry actually is. There are only 314 of these machines in existence, and one company can name every location. Chapter 6: What comes next? ASML's newest machine, High-NA EUV, sharpens the resolution even further and costs somewhere around $350 to $400 million per unit. A genuinely enormous line item, even for a company like TSMC. Intel moved first, installing its unit in Oregon in early 2024 and becoming the first company to ship high-volume logic chips built using it on its 18A node. Samsung has ordered multiple units for production by the first half of 2026. SK Hynix is lined up to take delivery for its memory chips. TSMC, by contrast, has reportedly been delaying adoption over the cost, even as it remains the industry's largest and most advanced chipmaker. That split matters because whichever company masters high-NA EUV first gets first access to the next generation of smaller, faster, more power-efficient chips, and ASML, once again, is the only company selling tickets to that race, at a price only a handful of firms on the planet can afford to pay. So what are the real risks? 3. And ASML has already lived through versions of each. Cyclicality. In October of 2024, ASML posted its steepest one-day stock drop since 1998. After cutting guidance and missing bookings estimates during a memory chip downturn. A sharp reminder that even a monopoly gets hit when its customers pause spending. Customer concentration. With 61% of revenue riding on 4 companies, any one of them slowing its factory build-out shows up in ASML's order book within a quarter. And China, Beijing's domestic lithography effort, led by a company called SMEE, is currently estimated to be roughly a decade or more behind ASML on older technology alone, with a genuine EUV capability, if it arrives at all, forecast anywhere from the early 2030s to well beyond that by independent analysts. None of these risks is a prediction that ASML falls, but a company this load-bearing for the entire AI economy deserves to have its pressure points mapped, the same way we've mapped them for every other machine in this stack. Zoom out, and ASML is the cleanest example this channel has covered of a toll booth with no detour. Nvidia designs the chips, TSMC manufactures them, but TSMC cannot manufacture anything advanced without buying its tools from ASML first, at whatever price ASML sets, on whatever timeline ASML can deliver. 30 years of accumulated engineering, an irreplaceable optics supplier, and a customer base that has no legal alternative combined to build a $674 billion company most people outside the chip industry have never heard of. That is what a genuine, durable monopoly looks like when it is built on physics and decades of accumulated knowledge rather than just market share. Every AI chip shortage headline, every debate over how fast the AI build-out can actually scale, ultimately traces back to how many of these machines ASML can build in a year and who gets to buy them. That is the machine economy, one choke point at a time. Subscribe now, because tomorrow on Mind Over Money, we ask why lottery tickets and meme stocks feel so good to buy, even when the odds are brutal.